Hi guys, I'm Martin and I've been a dating and relationship coach for 17 years. And today I'm going to talk about why it's important to think about and control the frames in your relationship. Now you may be wondering what a frame is, so let's start there. The way that I would define a frame is as ideas, beliefs, and opinions about how the world works. All right, that's all they are. They're ideas, beliefs, and opinions. So if you look at any kind of cult, let's say, or any kind of religion, or okay, let's look at, you know what? Let's do an even easier one. Let's look at a company. Let's think about Apple. Apple as a company. Why do people buy Apple? Well, people will tell you, well, they have the best technology. They have the best design. They have, there's all these things, right? But these are all just frames, right? I mean, one person thinks iPhone is the best design. Somebody else might disagree. Some people think it's the most user-friendly. So other people would disagree, right? So when people choose a particular brand, they're choosing that brand based on their ideas, beliefs, and opinions about that brand. It doesn't make it true because there is no objective truth around the things that a brand represents. Okay, so that's an example of a frame. In one example of a frame. So when you talk about ideas, beliefs, and opinions, you can adopt any number of frames that you want to adopt. For example, you could say, I'm an alien. That's your frame. You're an alien. Now, the issue, of course, is that some frames are more functional than others because part of the frame thing is that your frame has to interact with other people's frames too. And so when you look at all the stuff that's happening in the US especially, but in the West, around this gender stuff and how many genders there are and pronouns, this is basically a frame war where some people are saying gender is a fluid thing and we need to acknowledge that through language. And other people are saying, well, gender may be a fluid thing, but we're still only going to put people in one of two categories. And we're going to treat people in certain ways based on those categories. All right? Those are frames. And all the politics around it is competition between frames. Okay? Now, in your relationships, there are lots of frames. Now, the thing about relationships is that pretty much guys don't spend that much time thinking about their relationships. So we tend to not have very strong frames around our relationships. There's the proverbial idea of little girls imagining, and maybe not so little girls, imagining what their wedding is going to be like, in 20 or 30 years or whatever. Guys don't spend time doing that. We're not thinking about, our married life, But women often do think about this stuff. So they create some frames about how they want their relationship to go. And if you look at chick flicks, Titanic, The Notebook, 50 Shades of Grey, etc., what you see is a bunch of frames about what a good life is for a woman and what a good dating life is like and what kind of guy and she is a good guy and what kind of treatment she expects, right? These are just frames. They're not objectively true. But when she shows up in a relationship with you, she's going to come with a set of frames. Now the problem is you don't know what those frames are. I touched on this in another video, but I've seen, some women say, oh, well, he needs to be a real man. It's like, well, what the fuck is a real man? I can tell you that by Western standards, a lot of Korean guys who Korean women go crazy about would not be real men because their idea of men is different in Korea than it is in the US. One of the classics is two grown Korean men sharing a dessert. You could see that at cafes. Western guys wouldn't do that. It's not, that's not something that men do. They don't share a dessert. I mean, unless they're sharing a lot of other things, So there you go. So when a Westerner goes to Korea, I had a friend, actually not about Korea, he went to Japan, and he was looking at all the host guys. Now I don't know if you know what a host is, but a host is a guy who gets paid by women to drink with them, basically. So women pay these guys to drink with them because when they, it's the guy caters to them and makes them feel really good and gives them lots of positive emotions, and he's very skilled at it. So, it's kind of like a male escort, but usually there's no sex involved. And so so you have these. So when he got to Japan and he saw them, the way they dress is like, if you ever played Final Fantasy VIII, I think it was. Was Final Fantasy VIII the one with Squall? You don't remember? Okay. He wasn't nerd enough to know these things. But anyway, I think it was Final Fantasy VIII. There was a character named Squall. He has hair like this. Anyway, we can probably put like a little screen of what he looks like up there. And Squall, it looks just like a Japanese host guy. And my friend, he got to Japan, he saw these Japanese hosts. He's like, why are there so many gay guys in Japan? And it's like, gay guys, those guys aren't gay. Those guys are some of the most desirable guys. They're getting plenty of action. So, it's just a frame about what it is to be manly and what it is that girls want. And, obviously, these days, K-pop and the Korean wave is really popular. And you look at these Korean guys, that is so different from the idea of Western masculinity, but plenty of Western women are very into that now. So frames, right? So your girl shows up and she has certain frames about what behavior she expects and what behavior she thinks indicates that you're into her or not into her, right? There was a really funny episode of Sex and the City where the main character, Carrie, she's taken on a date to this kind of underground Chinese place. And she convinces herself that the guy brought her there because he doesn't want to be seen with her. And she's like the hidden side piece. Because she like looks around at the other people that are there. She asks her friend who goes there why he goes there. And so she convinces herself that he's just taking her there because she's the secret side piece and he's not really into her. And she gets all upset and worked up. And this happens. Women really are like this, where they get some idea in their head and they're convinced it's true and they get all worked up about it. And then she, explodes at him because he does something else that she feels is like slightly, thoughtless, like he forgot to call her, before he went to bed or something, like that. And then she flies off the handle. And, you didn't call me before bed. And he's like, why is that a big deal? And you took me to that restaurant where people only take people that they don't want to be seen with. And he was like, what? That's not why I took you there. That's the best Chinese restaurant in the city. That's why I took you there. And she's like, oh, okay, I didn't know that, right? And so you're always dealing with these frames. And, this stuff happens in real life. I remember on the reverse side, my mom was saying that when she and my dad first got married, my dad expected her to make breakfast. And she was like, why do you expect me to make breakfast? I'm not a morning person and I don't do breakfast anyway. And, my dad just, after they had this conversation, my dad's like, yeah, I don't know why I thought that. I don't know where that came from. He just had this frame. Now, some people would say, hey, that's my frame and that's what I want. And if she doesn't want to do it, then I don't want to be with her. Okay, that's fine. You can decide that. But that's what frames are. And so, as I was saying, a lot of women, they come in with certain frames. I remember I was talking to a guy and he was saying that, when he was in Taiwan, he got his girlfriend told him like, oh, you're supposed to carry my bag. And he was like, oh yeah, I didn't know I was supposed to carry her bag. So I started carrying her bag. So she had a frame and he just went along with that frame. Now I wouldn't go along with that frame. My whole thing is she picked that bag because it goes with her outfit. She should carry it around because it's her bag. Now let's say if she's bringing another bag, right? Not her purse that has her lipstick and her, makeup and, whatever in it and her wallet. I'm talking about, another bag that she's carrying. Sure, I'll carry that for her, right? Sure, I'm happy to carry that for her. I don't want her to be carrying a bunch of stuff. But her regular purse that she walks around with all the time, I'm going to carry it just because she's with me? No, I'm not going to do that. Now, that's a frame. And some girls might go, well, I don't want to date a guy who won't carry my bag. And it's like, all right, well, good riddance then. Or maybe you think, oh, well, if that's the only way that I can keep her around, then it's worth doing. I don't know. I don't care. It's up to you. You can decide which frames you want to deal with, which frames you don't want to deal with, which you're okay with adopting, which ones you don't want to adopt. Now, part of what you can do is that your girl may have certain expectations, but you may give her special treatment in other ways. So for example, you don't hold her bag, but you open doors for her and you pull out her chair, as an example, okay? So she might go, well, I think you should carry your bag, but you go, well, for me, the way to show you that, you're important to me is I open a door for you and I pull out chairs for you. And she can go, oh yeah, I guess that's true. Because maybe, the guys that hold her bag don't do that stuff. So you can see that there's, these different ways of displaying the same frame. Because the frame isn't exactly guys should hold girls' bags. It's guys show that they care and are paying attention by holding her bag, right? This is a Taiwan thing. We don't really have, I don't even, women don't really do that in the States or in the West, but, and I've never seen that anywhere else. I mean, in Japan, the only time guys carry girls' purses is when they're trying to take them to the Love Motel to get some action. Because I guess if they're holding her bag, then they know she can't get away. Oh, man. Okay. Right. So you need to think, so generally girls come in with a lot of frames and guys don't have a lot of frames. And that is a mistake. So you need to spend some time thinking about how you want your relationship to run and what kind of dynamics you want there to be in the relationship. And those could be things like, how should she greet you? When you greet each other, should you hug? Should you kiss? Should you grab her and throw her up in the air? That is a frame. Like, how do you want to give her like some kind of funky handshake? You could do that. Have a secret handshake between you and your girl, and you guys do it when you greet each other. That could be cool too. I don't have an opinion about this. There are just choices, and that and your frame about how you should greet each other can be something that you impose just by doing it automatically with her, or and this is kind of like if you're American or British or Asian or Canadian or most, from a country like maybe India, I think is also like this, and you meet a French person, then when they greet you, they're going to do the kiss. Or Argentinians, I think, do this too. Anyways, some Latin cultures do this. They'll give you a kiss on the cheek, right? And as an American, when that happens, I'm like, what's going on? Oh, right, they're doing the greeting. That's standard. And, you go along with it. I mean, I usually go along with it. But so that's kind of what I mean by you can impose that frame by just executing on it. And oftentimes when you do that, the person goes, oh, this is normal for this other person. And so they're fine to go along with it because it's not worth making a big deal about it. Right, so the thing is, if you don't consider the frames that are in play in your relationship, because especially in the beginning, right, you show up, she has some frames especially, and if you allow those frames to run, then you're going to now be expected to stay in those frames essentially forever. In the beginning, when you first meet someone, the frames are more fluid. That's really what getting to know someone is about. A big part of getting to know someone is figuring out what the frames are going to be that you operate under. This includes things like, how often do you talk on the phone? Do you talk on the phone? Do you send a text before you call and make sure the other person is available or not? Or do you just call, right? So this is a great example. I don't really like people calling me. I fucking hate it. You're in the middle of something, and you're trying to focus, and then the phone starts ringing, and it's like, oh, do I answer? Do I not answer? And it's like, well, I guess I should answer because maybe it's important. It drives me nuts. So for me, I like to have the frame in place that if you want to call me, you should send me a text first, and I can tell you I'm ready to take the call. If you call me, then it should be an emergency. And so if I am with a girl, she doesn't know this frame. We just met, we just started seeing each other, and she calls me. I'll answer the phone and be like, hey, what happened? Is everything okay? And she'll go, yeah, no, everything's fine. I'll go, oh God, you called me. I thought it must be an emergency. Whenever you call, I just assume it's an emergency. So, it's better if you just text me. And so now the girl is likely to think, oh, okay, I should text him. Now, some girls really, really like calling. And I'm probably going to do the same thing. And I would probably try that a few more times. And then if it persists, then the next thing I'll try is she'll call, I won't answer, and I'll text her back. Or this is another thing I might do, I have done. She'll call, I won't answer, and I'll text her back. Hey, is everything okay? I just saw you called me. Is there an emergency? Same thing. And she'll say, no, it's not an emergency. I just want to talk to you. Oh, okay. All right, well, I'm in the middle of something now. I'll call you, whenever. Now, I kind of touched on some of this stuff about frames in the video where I talk about dating, if you want to date more than one woman simultaneously without lying, if you want to date more than one woman at the same time without lying, I talk about how you need to set the frames in certain ways. So this is an example. If you set the frame that if she calls you, that she can call you for non-emergency things and you will pick up every time, that can wreak havoc if you are dating multiple women, because when you're with another woman and she calls and you need to answer, and if you don't answer, she's going to start to be suspicious because she's used to calling and you picking up. So that's an example of how if you don't set that frame early, even if you're not seeing multiple women, if you don't set that frame early, it can be problematic later. Okay, so that's an example of a very clear example. Other examples can be things like, of frames could be what you do for birthdays and holidays and how much time you spend with each other on those holidays, and how many times a week you see her versus how many times a week you don't. And so all of these things, she has some idea and you probably don't have any particular idea, but you should have some idea. Because if you don't have some idea, you're going to end up in her frame with her ideas, and those might make you miserable. And you have to figure this out early. When you're looking at her behavior, you have to think, is this going to be okay for me 3 months from now, 6 months from now, a year from now? And if it's not, or if you think it might not be, then you need to change the frame. I don't know. I think I covered pretty much everything that I can think of about frames. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of stuff depending on your specific situation, but, there's a few things. There's a lot of frames specifically that can be related to sex that I think a lot of guys make a big error about. And I talk about some of that. I don't talk about it in the terms of frames exactly, but I do talk about this in the video about why your wife or girlfriend doesn't have sex with you. We talk about frames somewhat in that. But there's the frames are in everything we do and in the way we behave and in the way we interact. That's why we think certain behavior is the right thing to do. That's just a frame. That's one of the fascinating things about living in a different country, is when you live in a different country, you see, hey, people have totally different frames about work, about family, about relationships. And sometimes you go, wow, and these frames are very functional. I used to think there was only one way to do it, but now I realize there's other ways to do it, which means maybe there's even more ways, right? All right. Thank you for joining. Like and subscribe. And if you have any questions or comments, leave them down below. And as always, don't be a dick. I don't like dicks. Those are for the ladies and for some of the guys.